I know that Billy loves acting and loves actors, loves this craft, loves this art form, and I believe he really, really believes in training, which is something we share. He most recently received acclaim for his role as Corey Ellison on The Morning Show, which earned him an Emmy Award and a Critics' Choice Award. He is a four-time Tony nominee, winning for his performance in Tom Stoppard's The Coast of Utopia. He has starred in numerous films over his 35-year career, including Almost Famous, Big Fish, Mission Impossible 3, Watchmen, Public Enemies, Spotlight, Jackie, Justice League, and Alien Covenant. And I would also want to add to that Without Limits. Also has an extensive career in voiceover. He was the voice of the MasterCard Priceless commercials for years. A self-described student of human nature, Billy has said that he looks for characters wrestling with their mistakes. Rumor has it that he declined an audition for the lead in Titanic, we can talk about that maybe, in order to seek out more challenging projects, and that he is often the second choice for roles, which would be a big mistake, I think. So let's please welcome, and you can turn on your mic so we can hear your applause, Billy Crudup.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank
Great.
you. Thank
That's
you.
nice. Okay. Hi, Billy. Welcome.
Hi, Terry. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's such an honor and such a pleasure. We were just talking before about when we met, which was through our mutual friend Sam Rockwell, and he, and I think it's a process I would imagine that you would care about, was getting ready to do this little indie film directed by Duncan Jones, David Bowie's son, called Moon, which I think he played like 8 different versions of himself, clones, and Sam loves people. Sam loves people around him. I love this. I love the commute with Zoom, but the technology is a little bit weird. Um, and so he has a lot of buddies who are actors, good actors, like you and Yul Vasquez and Phil Hoffman at the time, and arranged a soiree, I think on a Sunday afternoon over at his place in the East Village, just to kind of read through it and feel it out. And that's when we met. And I think that's fitting that we met in a kind of artistic context. How did you start acting? I'd love to know your origin story, and take as much time as you want. And when did you know that this was what you wanted to do?
Sure. And I'm glad you brought up Sam. Obviously, Sam is a process-oriented actor. His process is so vital to him that he is taken away from me as a friend for periods of time of the year when he's orienting himself around character and working with you and on text and development. And it is one of the things that I admire about him incredibly as an actor, and am awfully jealous of in terms of our friendship. But my own personal journey with, I suppose, arriving at the conclusion that I was an actor was a long one. It was circuitous, and I was never convinced. Sorry, one second. I'm going to change my internet setting there. I was never convinced that acting was going to be the sort of profession that would rely for a reliable adult life, I could rely on for a reliable adult life. And I had a sort of peripatetic childhood. My father was quite a charming man, but he was not very reliable, and was a gambler and a bookie and a loan shark. And so I was convinced that when I became an adult, I would find a profession that would provide some level of stability. So the notion of becoming an actor seemed antithetical to my hopes for myself as an adult. However, as I think most people listening or who have chosen the profession of acting know, it chases you. And at a certain point, you must relent if it's really in you. And if it's not really in you, you won't manage the first couple of years. It's too daunting. And I suppose throughout my undergraduate career, I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And in high school, there was no real opportunity for me to perform because I went to what's primarily a sports high school in South Florida. Not that I was a tremendous athlete, but there were tremendous athletes there. And consequently, they didn't have any kind of theater department or any kind of acting training. We did have one Spanish teacher, Angel Loma, who encouraged anyone who was a performer to find a vehicle for that. And I played piano at the time, classical piano, and would often perform the in recitals. And he saw that as my own personal industry with respect to performing, and encouraged me. And I think also there are so many people out there who it is the encouragement of mentors that allows them to bust through the doors of the first number of obstacles that are presented to you if you choose the life of a performer. When you have that kind of encouragement from people, it adds an inertia to that drive. And he was one of the original ones to say, I think you're a performer. You should really consider this and continue looking into this. And when I got to undergraduate, I declared a business major originally because I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do. And my father apparently was a businessman, and his father before him. So, and they both went to school there as well. So I thought, that's what I'll do. It became very clear my freshman year, first semester, that I was not going to be pursuing a business career or a business major even. But I did begin to take some classes that excited me. For instance, oral interpretation of prose and poetry, which they offered in the speech communications department, which was an incredible confluence of events for me, because I figured I could earn a degree in speech communications, duping my father and grandfather, who were footing part of the bill for my college, and I could continue performing. And so I took all of the performing classes in the speech communications department and was still feeling an incredible draw, and went to the theater department and began taking all of the classes in the undergraduate department, at which point, again, there were two mentors that I had. Am I going on too long?
No, no, it's great. It's great. It's great.
There were two mentors that I had there, Didi Corvenis and Susanna Reinhardt, who encouraged me to take the acting for majors classes there. And they said, you don't have to declare a major. We admire your pursuit and your ambition and your energy. I think that I was most notable for my energy. I had a lot of enthusiasm for the craft of acting, not a great deal of talent or capability yet, but I did have an incredible amount of energy. And so they helped to focus and shape that. And by the time that I had finished the undergraduate, I had taken nearly every performance level class, graduate and undergraduate, in both the speech communications department and the drama department. And again, I went to them and said, so what do I do now? And they suggested I consider graduate school. And after thinking about it for quite some time, I realized that so many of my mentors were teachers. And one of the things that I found most exciting about the potential of being in the workforce was the thought of being a teacher and an educator. And so I decided to get my master's in acting. And it was pretty clear to me that it was a cerebral choice the moment I set foot in the NYU fifth floor graduate acting program. And I was around people who took it as seriously as I did. And I realized, I think I want to be an actor, actually. That's what I really want to do. And I needed to be around the people who were in the graduate program at the time, and to see the level of intellect, intelligence, heart that they were applying towards this craft in order to understand that's how I wanted to pursue it as well. So that was the moment, I think the first day of my first year of graduate school at NYU, that I considered myself an actor, and an actor who could not go back at that point. And I was going to pursue it, win, lose, or draw from that point forward. And to your point about training early on, I do value it in um, I don't know if I overvalue it, but to me, it is instrumental in creating an opportunity for you to not only sustain a career, but find the central voice, a central artistic voice worth speaking about in the performing arts as you move through the various chapters in your life. So one of the fundamental things that I remember learning through Ron Van Loo, who was our acting teacher at the time, which was a horrible thing to learn, which was, he essentially said, I'm not going to teach you how to act.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of different kinds of acting tracks that you could take. I'm going to teach you how to curate your own path so that you can, over time, build the foundation for yourself as your instrument changes, as your life changes, as your desires change. And that's the thing that will allow you to accommodate a life in the performing arts. And I have found that to be true. I've been incredibly lucky and grateful at the same time. But the attention that he put on us developing our own language for ourselves to speak to how we work in the world as a performing artist was instrumental to me. So that's sort of how I've found myself here today.
That's so great. I love Ron, and as you know, he left NYU, went to Yale, and now is at Columbia. Kind of, he's in his 80s now, but still
He is. He
doing.
just turned 80, and he's had
Yeah,
far too many retirement parties,
yeah,
Terry,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I've stopped showing up for them now.
But you know, I was watching a video of him teaching recently, and he's so gentle and yet clear. He's got this. It was Chekhov, which of course there's very few people as good as he is with Chekhov, and he had this childlike energy, and he was sort of saying to someone in Uncle Vanya, well, I don't know what do you think she might be doing right now? And it
Yes.
was, you know, it's just so lovely. I want to just ask, was Zelda running the program when you were
She
there?
was. She
Yeah.
was. And she taught a class as well first year called Universe, which was specifically about us finding a way to describe what our universe was to our classmates in a performance. And I'd never done anything like that before.
Yeah, I want
So
to just, I think a bunch of people might not know who Zelda Fishhandler was. I met Zelda when in her last year at Arena Stage. She had founded Arena Stage, and I was assistant directing a production of Measure for Measure down there. And it's an extraordinary, one of the great, I'm saying this to all of you, not to Billy, because Billy knows all this, regional theaters in our country. And she and her husband, Tom, really ran a beautiful theater with a resident company, which was the goal of graduate school at the time. The goal of graduate school
question.
back then was get into a repertory company somewhere, and Arena Stage was like the plum. And
And
then,
that was the foundation for our training as well. The
yes,
idea of company, the idea of
yes,
story.
yes,
Why have we all gathered for
right,
one night?
right.
That was a rather novel notion to me. I think my idea of performing was, um, let me sweat it out enough and get some attention, and maybe I'll find a way to build a tribe. There wasn't. It was a personal stake I had in trying to find my place in the world, rather than accepting that I had a place in the world and a voice that I could collaborate with people on to be expressive and share in this incredible exchange idea we have of performance, the transaction, the performance transaction between the viewer and the performer. which we do in a myriad of ways. But Zelda really, I have to tell you, Terry, there were times in her class that she would become so esoteric in her expression, and we were first years. All we were really looking for was give us some foundations. We're scared shitless. We're going to be about $80,000 in debt when this is over,
Yeah.
and I just need to know that I can sing and dance, and maybe get through the first couple years of my career. And she was teaching this rather esoteric class about universe and building your lives and as an actor and performer. And so I felt often lost in that class. It was more about like creative agency. I didn't know it at the time. But she would give a speech every year at the beginning of class. The trajectory of acting school was like this to me. You would start up here at the beginning as a real high. Oh my gosh, we're all here. We've gathered again. We're going to learn so much. And then slowly you're beaten down over the course of the year as you discover, and this is the way it works for me in plays as well, as you discover all the questions that you didn't even know you should ask about yourself, about the work, about how to apply your ambition. And you gather yourself over the summer, gear back up again, get into school, you start again. Again, all these questions come. You have a new series of faculty members who ask even more ambitious questions of you, ask to challenge you in new ways. Again, you gather yourself. But it was Zelda's speech at the beginning of every year that really was about the importance of the American actor for her. It was the foundation of that was the repertory company, because it taught collaboration, it taught community, it taught artistic expression, and it was an advocate for public discourse through the medium of theater. And her incredible audacity and her relentless drive to express and try to translate what was so incomprehensible to people in America who think of it as a commercial enterprise,
Yeah.
that this is a civic duty that we all have to one another. She gave that to us each and every year. And I count myself incredibly fortunate that I had the experience of bearing witness to that when I did.
Yeah, it's really such a shame that the economics of art and acting don't really make that happen, because people can't even imagine. This was a company where you had full-time employment benefits. You might not even be members of SAG-AFTRA because you were members of Actors Equity, and they were called LORT theaters, and the bigger ones were LORT A's and the smaller ones were B's, C's, and D's. And then they would build a season around the company. So it was a well-rounded company and for the community. So it was this incredible dialogue between a company of artists and directors and designers, and of course they'd bring people in, and sometimes there'd be guest directors and guest designers, but there was this core group, and Zelda would direct a lot, and people who grew up in that theater, who came in their 20s and had babies and grandchildren in that company, and then at the same time having a dialogue with the city, wherever they were, with Washington in this case, of like, this is what we think is an important season. And and it's still a great theater. It's a great theater, but it's no longer a resident company.
Yeah, I think we don't benefit as a community, as a state, as a country, without an integral public discourse with our artists. And I believe firmly in the National Endowment of the Arts, and the slow demise of its power and potential has been, to me, devastating. And I feel strongly that a community that's connected to its artists is a community that's thriving. It's asking itself questions in a creative, inspired, emotional, abstract, direct, audacious way. And it's demanding of one another in that exchange. And that conversation is one that I feel like we particularly, when you think about it right now, how didactic the conversations are, how unnuanced and unempathetic they are, and how chastising they are. When you have a place that allows you to explore those conversations in the world of fantasy, in the world of invention, it's a safer space to begin to engage the other in a way that promotes understanding between both of you. And I can't help but feel like there is some part of the variable that has led to the polarization in our country right now that has to do with our lack of interest in local arts.
Yeah. And the other.
And the other, that's almost exclusively what we explore whenever we're putting on a play, whenever we're that is one of the beautiful common themes. And actually, it is the primary thing that you encounter as an actor. We're so used to, as actors, trying to find a way in that's that can bring us closer to the character closer to us. When really what we're asking ourselves is, what do we know about the other? What can we imagine about the other? How empathetic and how broad is our reach? At what level of humanity can we creatively tolerate in order to play this in a way that will resemble something real for the people who are viewing it? That's always an exploration of the other. So to me, it has been an act of empathy at its best.
Yeah.
Often it's an act of working, which is obviously the primary thing. But when you get to the creative aspect of it, when you get to how you're pursuing your own creative ambitions, to me, it really is trying to understand humanity in a way that perhaps you didn't before. A question of bringing that other closer.
Yeah. I was listening to NPR this morning, and they were talking about Shakespeare, and started to weave a thread of his outcasts, Malvolio, Jaques, Caliban, and relating that to immigrants. And it was a fascinating idea. And then I was listening in preparation for this conversation to an interview you did with Charlie Rose, a couple of them, but specifically one with you and Kate Burton talking about Elephant Man.
Right.
And I'd love you to talk a little, because it seems kind of connected right now, just in terms of empathy and why that play is so powerful to act, but also so powerful for audiences. And just a little bit about your process into that.
Sure. I had met Sean Matthias several times before. I auditioned for, I haven't thought about this in a while. It was eventually called Indiscretions, I think, but it was, it had a French title before that, Les Enfants Terribles, maybe. And I'm not good at French or anything, but the I auditioned. He was directing it. I'm only laughing because my audition was memorable insofar as I got a call back to audition with Kathleen Turner, and I was very excited about using my newfound theatrical voice, and I had never auditioned on a Broadway stage. So to see the volume of the house that I had to fill in that moment, I was hell bent to let them know that my master's degree would make me formidable and capable in this environment.
Yeah.
And Kathleen Turner was sitting about a foot from me, and I don't remember the exact line, but I do remember saying my line, whatever it was. I wish you weren't so upset with me. And an act of irony, she just turns to me and goes, "What?" As though I had perhaps overshot my reach. But in any case, I had met Sean Matthias there, and then he approached me at a party and he said, "I've been thinking a lot about the play Elephant Man, and I've been thinking about it from a sociological perspective and what we're doing right now socially to deify people with public image. And I thought it might be an interesting exploration to take somebody like you, who's been asked to be kind of like a magazine, like I forget what the word is, but somebody who likes to, or somebody who's on magazines a lot.
Like a matinee idol.
Matinee idol.
Yeah.
Because I was getting requests to do, like photo shoots and things like that, and early in my career, much earlier in my career. But I resisted it because I didn't really understand what it was. I thought, I'm not a model. Damn it! I've done Chekhov, for Pete's sakes,
Okay, yeah.
And my agents and publicists were somewhat, or my agent and publicist were somewhat dismayed that I didn't quite understand the commercial opportunity of that, but I really didn't understand it. But I did understand when Sean said, there's something perverse about this request. There's something perverse about us finding images of people more fascinating than people themselves.
Yeah.
And so that play began to speak to me in that way. And we decided to it was really a thrilling experience because Sean was interested in creating a company, an ensemble company, some of which were some of my fellow acting students from NYU. So there was a great deal of trust between us all.
Mm.
And he allowed the company to be a part of building this production. And it was an abstract production. And it's a rather abstract play in the way that it's structured. It's certainly unconventional, but it was ours. And I loved that. To your point before about a company, we felt complete ownership over whether it worked or didn't work for people. It was an original rendering of this piece through this specific company at this place and time for the purpose of examining these themes. And to that end, we set up a moment where the audience would see me go from sort of a matinee idol repose and then instantly transform into John Merrick, and keep them there in that space for the entirety of we didn't have an intermission, for the entirety of the show. And then at the very end, simply allow my body to relax back into its normal repose, so the audience could see right there that they had been tricked, that they were a part of this discussion about what it means to have substance, what it means to put value in image over character.
Yeah.
And I simply loved that enterprise. I felt so grateful. And I can say this, to your point before about training, another reason that training to me is I speak about often. I couldn't have done that performance at all without the training that I had, without the physical training, the vocal training, the text training, the dialect training. It was a very technically challenging performance, and I would have broken down. I wouldn't have made it through previews. I was using a very high register in my voice.
Yeah.
My body was somewhat contorted. I had to do a great deal of warm up and then warm down. And I wouldn't have known how to do that without the work that I had done in graduate school.
Yeah, I always think of that character for anybody playing it. We're being joined by Javier. Okay. As a real test of the actor's ability to stay open physically and not get tense because of the contortions. Did you run into that? Did you have to do like physical therapy or massages or?
I did not. I was very fortunate. I spent a lot of time preparing physically, And it always been my primary interest with respect to how to go about, for instance, working out and training. There are three primary things for me with respect to my physical health. And one is flexibility. The second is endurance. And the third is strength. I don't have much interest in bulking up. I really don't get offers to do bulked up things. I would do it in a heartbeat. But the reason for that is flexibility for physical opportunity should it present itself in a role. And that was one in which there was any number of choices that you could make. And so you really want to have some kind of neutral starting place, an Alexander technique sort of starting place from which you can shape your body around it. And I was so trusting in our director, in fact, that after 4 weeks of rehearsal, he just said in front of the company, "Billy, your physical work is not working right now. We need to scratch it and start over." And so the next day I showed up at rehearsal with absolutely no physical effect. And we piece by piece over the next 2 weeks began to build a new kind of physical way of being that that was a thrilling enterprise for me. It was not
I got terrified when you said that, so that's interesting. Yeah.
it was fascinating.
Yeah.
But I felt in such great hands and so trusting of the company, and I felt capable physically for all those reasons that I had stated before. That I feel like it's really worthwhile for actors to be able to maintain some level of flexibility and endurance for when you do get an opportunity like that.
Yeah. And training, voice and movement training.
No question.
Alexander. So that makes me think about, it's almost as if theater has this luxury of, hi, whoever, bye, Ellen, of rehearsal. And as you know, nowadays, for the most part, film and TV has little or no rehearsal, and occasionally you'll get some. So how do you navigate that? What's your process when you don't have? Sean sounds like truly an actor's director and a true artist, and I would say that not every a director you're going to maybe work with in film and TV is that these days. And so how do you take care of yourself and get ready for roles when that's not on offer?
Well, I rehearse. That's what happens. I rehearse. I end up rehearsing myself. I sometimes employ someone to run lines with me as a way of understanding how I need to physically accommodate the way a person might speak. For instance, on the morning show, that character speaks faster than I do. The character thinks faster than I do, which means my level of preparation in order to play the character I want to play has to be extensive. I do a tremendous amount of text analysis, is what I would call it, which is really breaking down specifically each word to understand what alternatives the writer chose not to use. Why did they choose these specific words? Why does anyone feel like they could have the floor long enough to speak a volume like that? Those sorts of things to me are text analysis, which is essentially based in storytelling. So why have we all gathered today? What story are we telling so that we might hear this? And what part does this character play in making that story work? Those are the first central things that you think about. And then you begin to think about each of the scenes as a way of curating that overall arc. What is accomplished in this scene? Why is this scene here? Why can't this scene be cut? Then you break it down further. Why is this line in there? Why can't this line be cut? Why is it essential? And then you begin to build from that point of view, a person who's able to fulfill those obligations. So for me, Corey had to be a person who was entitled enough to speak in long paragraphs about things that he maybe knew little about, or maybe was formulating an idea about in the moment. And then you use your acting training to make it appear as though it's happening for the first time. Then you use tools like immediacy. You dispense with everything you know and try to be in the moment when you're actually playing it.
Yeah.
But you don't have the opportunity. This is the part that becomes somewhat disappointing, typically, is to use the other actor in a collaborative way to conspire to tell the story together, which is always, to me, the most exciting one, because that inevitably makes things bigger than I could have imagined. I'm stuck in my own imagination when I'm sitting there rehearsing myself. When I'm introduced to ideas that are contrary to my point of view, when I'm introduced to ideas that I'd never considered, all of a sudden the potential for me playing the character and the potential for the scene grows exponentially. You add somebody else into that mix, you add a director into the mix. I had a very close relationship with a writer on the morning show, and she was my primary collaborator in terms of the text analysis and understanding the story, because you don't get all of the scripts at once typically, or I didn't on the morning show. You would get them, as they came along, which was sometimes pretty close to shooting. So in order to incorporate some level of collaboration and understanding, she was my linchpin. And then you obviously you collaborate on the day with the other actors. But the nature of my work is similar to theater insofar as dedicated, disciplined rehearsal in interest of telling a story in a vivid and I suppose considered way.
Do you have, so that's a series regular part. Was it always the same director for each episode, or is it as
No.
often as different directors?
Yes, I think we had up to, let me see, 6 directors for that season. Mimi Leader directed 3 of them. And then we had one other director who directed 2, and then 5 others, I believe.
Yeah.
And all wildly different approaches. And
How
some,
does that work? How do you keep rooted and yet open to some ideas but then sometimes they can, I don't know, Sam likes to tell a story of a movie he did with Gene Hackman, and it wasn't about a director, but it sort of was, where like he was in a car and they had one of these things where the camera was like right here, and at a certain point Hackman just went, "Guys, I need some space. Like you're crowding me right now." And it was the camera, but it was also just like sometimes you kind of need, like, don't mess with the, I'm cooking.
right.
And how does that, because you seem to be such a gentleman but also really dialed into your art, um, how do you have those conversations when some ambitious director wants to come in and tinker with something
Well,
that's already dialed in?
it's a great question, Terry. And the fact of the matter is, it goes back to school for me. When you're in school and you're trying to navigate various ambitious young personalities, if you're not capable of talking and listening to people and entertaining wildly different ideas and accommodating performances that you're adamant are not in service of the story,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're a lost cause in this. I mean,
Yeah.
in the endeavor that we're talking about,
Yeah. Yeah.
you will be a solo artist. You might be in collaborative things, but you certainly won't be taught. When I look at you in the eye, I know I'm not getting you back. Like you're looking somewhere else. You're looking through me.
Yeah.
When I look somebody in the eye who wants to collaborate, both of us light up.
Yeah.
And the spirit of collaboration, it's kinetic, and you then find the scene together. And so the notion of how do you manage these moments of confrontation? How do you manage these moments of maintaining a space for yourself that you can work? That's all part of the process that I think I learned at school of negotiating a collaborative creative enterprise. And part of it is recognizing the other people have agendas too. It's important for the focus puller to do a good job in this moment. He's just had a baby. He's really excited about being a father, but he's getting no sleep and he really needs the job.
Yeah.
He's great at his job, but right now he's not at his best. So you might have to give him a couple of takes if you're moving too much, if you're moving too close to the lens.
Yeah.
And so part of it is an understanding of each of the different processes that you're working in, whether it's the theater. In the theater, you constantly have to work with the audience. You didn't ask for a quarter of the audience to, a quarter of the house to be filled on a Saturday afternoon, when like Elephant Man, we had a hard time selling tickets. And I think we actually closed the day of the Tonys. I can remember being asked on the red carpet, how's the show going? Having to tell them that we closed that day.
No.
But so in that particular instance, you're interacting with the audience because your expectations are that you've got a room full of people who are there to engage. And the fact of the matter is, half of that quarter of an audience was asleep. Yeah. And so how do you as a performer engage with them? And part of it is, again, back to your question of empathy, understanding that this is a public dialogue, that this is not a ego-driven enterprise where you're at the center and everybody has to work around you. It's just, that's a route to an early death and a disastrous experience. You might be very successful, don't get me wrong. There's ways to be incredibly successful by being selfish in that way, or what I would characterize as selfish. Or if not selfish, disinterested in the fact that this is a transactional relationship between you and the people you collaborate with and you and the audience. But so for me, those moments, they typically, I will take somebody aside, or I will find a way, if there's a specific thing that I'm finding disruptive, to engage in a dialogue and say, this is so Terry, the moment that's happening right now for me is quite a confusing one. And what I'm putting my energy on is the listening in the moment, which requires silence so I can really hear what's coming from the other person. And there's a movement that you're having to do with the camera. And as you walk there, I'm finding that there's not enough carpet there, and is there a way for us to do both? I understand this dolly move is awesome. You guys, I know it's going to work perfect on this. But it's really important to me. And I know sound's not picking it up, so it's not an issue with them. This is really just for me. And at that moment, they could tell you to fuck off. Yeah. And that's okay. Like that's a part of the enterprise too. But that's how I typically approach it.
Yes. Well, I can tell that if acting didn't work out, diplomacy would have been helpful.
I moved around a lot when I was a kid, so diplomacy was always a big part of my childhood.
Yeah. Justin, can you just tell me, are you getting questions? Because I could talk to Billy all day, but I really want, as I said to Billy, to you as we started, the real, you're a really busy guy, and for me, this is such a generous act of service to young actors who are looking for inspiration. So I want to give them some time and space. Justin, can you pipe in?
Yes, we just have one so far. So if people
One so far.
Yeah.
So guys, I want to turn
Mom,
it over to
are
you.
You there?
Yeah, Mom, are you sleeping, friends? I see 72 people. We had 73 a minute ago, so someone just got.
Oh God, we're back to Elephant Man again.
Yeah. I want to talk about how you choose roles, and because I'm imagining at this point, for the most part, it's all about offers, and saying no to probably most things. What catches your attention, and how are you navigating, and then like part two would be, is there a part, specifically maybe a theater part, but it might not be, that you would love to play?
Well, to the first part, and I think this is crucial for actors to understand. There is no point in your career that you're not confronting the same obstacles that you were confronting when you're starting out. That is to say, the insecurity you feel when you can't get an agent, the desperation you feel when your part is cut when you finally got it, is not dissimilar to the desperation you feel when you've been working for 25 years and you can't get in the room. When the morning show came to me, I was doing a play off Broadway called Harry Clark, and my manager also represented Jennifer Aniston. My manager liked that performance, so she knew something that I didn't, that Jen had a show coming up. And so she invited Jen to to Harry Clark. And afterwards, she said, "So I'm doing this show. I want you to read the script. If there are any parts that appeal to you, please let me know." So I read the script and I said, "I really like that freak who becomes the president of the network. I don't understand him at all. And I think I've got an angle on him, but anybody who speaks with that level of enthusiasm and interest about things that he knows very little about is fascinating to me." And she said, "Okay, great. Let me talk to the producers." At which point they came back and said, "No, we think that part is for someone younger. Would you be interested in this other part?" And I said, I don't really understand that other part. There doesn't appear to be much to do in terms of its growth and its arc. And they said, "Well, the part of Corey is really good. It's going to go to somebody else." At which point my manager said, "If you're interested in this part, you're going to have to fly out to LA and pitch them." So I bought myself a new suit, bought a plane ticket, stayed at my, actually I stayed at my agent's house. I've become very close with his family over the 20 years that we've worked together. And I drove around to 3 different producers to pitch them my idea of Corey Ellison, and probably lost 30 pounds in sweating because I don't know how to pitch. I was just trying to tell them what I thought the part should be, what I thought was on the page. At which point I flew back to New York feeling very confident, and they said no. They said, "We have no interest in you in that part." And at which point I told my agent and my manager I didn't need to speak with them for a couple of days, and felt incredibly defeated and somewhat shell-shocked yet again, as I don't know how, I think 49 or 50 at the time, feeling like, wow, I really thought I had a beat on that. And several days later, it was as though I was in a poker game that I didn't know I was in. They were like, "Okay, well, yeah, oh yeah, we'll give you the part." Wow. Like I was trying to bluff them or something like that, and I would eventually come back and say, "Yes, I'll play that part that I don't know how to do because I need a job." Because I was sincere that I really didn't know how to do that other part, and I really thought I had an angle on this one. And even still, Apple did not do the press release that I was in that part until I had already signed a contract, and we had our initial table read in front of the Apple executives. Then they did the press release. So there is no Alien Covenant. Ridley wouldn't meet me for that. They wouldn't even give me the script for that. I got dummy sides for that. And I was so indignant that I gave a spite audition, put myself on tape, where I was like, "You think I can't fucking do this part? How about this?" And so then Ridley saw it and he was like, "Well, that's weird. Okay, yes, fine. You can do it." So there is no end to this idea, this notion that you sort of plateau and it's all offers. You have a window if you have some success. And I've experienced it is usually 1.5 to 3 years, depending on the level of success, where you might get offers. And there are actors who have been able to parlay each of those into another 3 years. And so we just see them as actors who have careers of offers, but it's because each successive one led to something successful. And typically, when you have some success, you get the best opportunities, which give you the best opportunity to have success again. So there is a compounding effect to that kind of success. But my career has not been, I haven't had that because in no small part, I love doing theater as well. And the fact of the matter is, people in the movie and TV business think that you're sort of taking time off, or you lack ambition, or you aren't, or that you're crazy. When for me, I was building the kind of career that I wanted to, of a versatile one in stage and film. To your earlier point, I have to keep coming back and working hard to try to get the parts that I want. To the second, what was the second part of your question?
Is there a part that you'd love to do that's on your bucket?
No, I discovered this too, and this was, I felt relieved at discovering this, because there have been periods of my career, as I was describing before, where I couldn't get work, and certainly couldn't get the work that I wanted to do, and wasn't. Listen, there have been plenty of times that I couldn't get work that I wanted to do, and did work because I needed to do work, and it wasn't work that I wanted to do, but it was work that I needed to do. But there have been times when I haven't been able to get either. And, I've had conversations with people where they say, well, just write something for yourself. I have to say, having performed in several Tom Stoppard plays, it's pretty clear to me that my writing sucks ass. It is no good. It is not interesting. There's no reason it should be out there. I don't have anything to say as a writer at this point in my career. And therefore, I'm not going to put it out there just because I don't have anything else to do. And that, I think I felt like that was defeat for a long time, until I discovered that really I'm an interpretive artist. That's what I do. I need the primary source. I need a director to tell me why we're doing this. And then I can sort of do the calculus about how I fit in, and the way in which I can bring something interesting to a part that will be of interest in your story. And so I feel quite comfortable now knowing that about myself. It's excruciating at times when you're not working, but it's sort of liberating to this notion that I better become a writer, having spent the last 35 years trying to become an actor.
That sounds smart. Justin, how are the questions coming?
We have some brilliant questions here.
Okay, great. So my last question, although I won't necessarily keep that promise, and then we'll turn it over to the folks, is what advice would you have for young artists in training right now? And that can be very specific and or very general, whatever comes to your mind, because I think it's a scary time, and there's so much content, but there's so many actors, and there are a lot of actors who don't care about training, who are really dialed into like growing their Instagram followers and going to parties and often I think actors and representatives, agents and managers often discourage actors from training because that takes them off the market. And so I think it's kind of a radical act of bravery even to train these days. But what advice would you have for them?
I think you make a great point there, Terry. And there's no question that I am late to and not interested in what may be the future of performing. As reality television grew, I realized that there were going to be portions of the entertainment industry that I no longer understood. There were portions of the audience's desire for entertainment that I wouldn't be a part of. And I suspect that will continue. So to that end, I don't try to fit in to that world. I accept that I may not have all of the opportunities that other people have who participate in that side of the business. And I try to work relentlessly on the opportunities that I get. So the advice that I would give is know the kind of actor that you want to be. And in knowing the kind of actor you want to be, whether it's one that is capable of utilizing the social media and networking as a useful force in their own careers, exploit that and work on that in the way that you would the hardest part that you've ever received. Take that as seriously as you might take a career in the regional theater. Don't be a dick. Don't imagine that any of these enterprises, however seemingly easy it might be for people to introduce themselves into a career, don't imagine that they will be able to sustain a career without incredible thought and work. It is a difficult business, whatever route you take, theater, film, social media, television, curating your own web series, whatever it is. If you are interested in sustaining something over a period of time, you better understand your own process. And you better take it seriously. That is my advice, that this is not an enterprise for the foolhardy. It's not an enterprise for the thoughtless. So whatever route you're taking, take yourself and take it seriously. Think of yourself as I said before, someone who is a part of a transactional enterprise with your community to try to discuss the nature of humanity, to give us all a little break, a parenthetical break from the difficulties and the vicissitudes of our individual lives. We get to join together for whether it's one Instagram post that brings somebody a little bit of 5 seconds of joy or 30 minutes of joy because of what you wrote behind it, or tour of Hamlet where you're starring and it's a revolutionary production. Know that those things are similar. They are not unrelated. It is a part of a cultural discourse that is meant to engage you with the world, and that's worth taking seriously.
That's great. Justin, I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit, and our guests.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. The first great question here is from...
Isn't it great? Justin has a great voice, and this is like the voice of God coming.
I feel really calmed, I have to say.
Yeah.
I just went to heaven there.
Yeah.
Thank you. First here is Daryl King. Daryl, if you'd like to come on video and ask your question, you may.
Daryl's a Canadian actor.
Fantastic. Well, I'll shape it back and say North America.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I'm actually really nervous talking to you, but it's because I hold you in high esteem. And a couple of years ago, cheers. A couple of years ago, I listened to Sam Jones' interview, and my two favorites were you and Sam Rockwell. And I hope I'm not misquoting you. Just to paraphrase, you said, what an actor does in their downtime is like a marker of their professionalism. And I was wondering what kind of extracurricular activities you do in your downtime for your acting being, especially if it's not like typically thought of type activities.
Well, that's a great question. And it's imperative that an actor understands what to do with their downtime, because most of their time will be downtime. That is the life of an actor. You're on the bench most of the time, waiting to be called up. That's just part and parcel of the trade. So the first thing you want to be able to do, as I was saying before, is make sure that your instrument is ready to play when it's time to play. So you have to physically stay in some kind of shape that makes you capable when you're given the opportunity. So that's the first thing I would say. the ways that I go about doing that are, sort of rudimentary exercise. Both Sam and I like to exercise often together. I also need to do things to mitigate the anxiety that I experience living in the world and living as an actor. Some of the things that I do to mitigate anxiety for myself are golf. Because we lived near a golf course, and my brothers and I, when we were younger, would sneak on. And I'm very competitive. I have two brothers, and my older brother and I were any ball game that you could play where we could have a competition together. That was. I got a switch in me, and it goes off, and I get laser focused. And when you are laser focused on something that's so inconsequential and so ridiculous as making a shot, hitting a ball, making a good swing, any of those things, it really does liberate your mind from all of the pressures that you have in your daily existence as an actor, or in that point as a non-working actor. So any kind of meditative practice you can do, which I do consider golf. I often go out myself, and it's 3 hours of me doing the stupidest possible thing that I can imagine, dressing up in a costume and trying to hit a ball for no particular reason. So that is a really instrumental part of one of the things that I do during the downtime. Running is one, hiking is one. Also, my son and I love watching movies, watching TV shows. We have countless conversations about filmmaking and storytelling and acting. And I would say the biggest one for me is going to the theater, which has been a huge, obviously, interruption and interference over the last couple of years for all of us. But that was a big part of why I'm in New York, why I stayed in New York the entirety of my career, is because the theater community, to me, as I've spoken before, is a way for me to be engaged in the world, not just socially, but artistically as well, to see what people are pursuing, what level of skill people are bringing to the table now, what kind of ingenuity they're utilizing in their stagecraft. What else do I do? That's probably about it.
Thank you so much. You're always very generous, and I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody does.
Thank you so much, Daryl. I really appreciate it.
Daryl.
Thank you.
That's great.
Great. Tarek has a question. Tarek, are you there?
Hi.
Hey.
I see that my camera is a little blurry, which is weird. Hi, Billy. My name's Tarek. I'm a first year under Terry here at the studio. You are awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. You mentioned a little bit about Alexander technique.
Yeah.
And you just talked about anxiety a little bit. You seem really centered when you're working. You're very relaxed and emotionally centered, I noticed, in a lot of the roles that you do. Is there a way you get there just before a scene? Because I know you just talked about like outside of the work, but I'm curious, before a scene, what you do for that.
I think you have to add why you're asking. Do you freak out?
I freak out a little bit, and I think it bleeds into my behavior in acting in a way. Yeah.
Well, there's no question. Of course it would. I mean, I've had lots of different experiences with my internal emotional life in the theater and in film. I've had panic attacks on stage, and I also become incredibly calm and comfortable. The first play that I did on Broadway, and I was 6 months out of graduate school, was a Tom Stopper play called Arcadia. And I'll never forget the first preview. My heart was pounding, and me and Jennifer Dundas were out on stage, and the music was swelling. You could hear the crowd. It was the Vivian Beaumont. And so to be at Lincoln Center in New York, I was just like percolating, and as soon as the curtain went up and she says, Septimus, what is carnal embrace? And I say, Con embrace is the practice of throwing one's arms around a side of beef. The audience starts laughing. My whole body relaxed, and I was like, I know what to do. The preparation at that point really just went away. So I've experienced extreme calm under those distressing circumstances, and I've experienced incredible panic when I did Harry Clark at the Vineyard Theater. During previews, it was just me on stage telling a story for like an hour and 20 minutes. And during previews, as you get older, your brain is not as receptive as it was to internalizing text when you were younger. I would bet that most of the people who are here right now allow themselves to get into acting because internalizing text was not a difficult thing. Most people run from it because they think, I can't memorize lines. And you will find that most actors simply have the kind of brain that they intuitively know how to internalize text. So as you get older, when that capacity starts to change and becomes less reliable, it can become incredibly intimidating. And so for this particular performance, it was just me speaking for an hour and 20 minutes. And within the first minute and a half, I went up and I had to call. We didn't have any systems set up. There wasn't somebody well, there was a system set up after that night, but I had to call to the stage manager's booth line, which I had to do, I think, 2 more times. And I subsequently skipped, I think, about 18 pages and only realized it as we got further into the show. And I realized that the audience hadn't heard several plot points, at which point I had to improvise and sort of get at the end of that, I was such a train wreck. The director comes back afterwards and she goes, well, that happened. The point being, it's not going to get harder than that. There is, and it does sort of force you at that point to confront the inevitable, which is, do I really want to do this? Win, lose, or draw, meltdown or triumph, do I really want to do this? And sort of on the walk home, I was like, what the fuck else am I going to do? All right, well, I guess I got to come back in tomorrow and try it again. So what I do with my relationship with anxiety is meet it where it is every time. I don't run away from it. I don't try and drug it away. There are ways in which you can mitigate. The first time I had a panic attack, I was actually prescribed a beta blocker called propranolol, I believe. And I took it one night. It doesn't really have much of a dulling effect. It really keeps your body from releasing all of the chemicals that make you feel like you're going to die when you have a panic attack. So it just keeps your body from reacting in the way that becomes so intimidating. That being said, after that one night, I felt very uncomfortable. I was concerned about relying on that. So I began breathing meditations. During Harry Clark, I would take a long cold shower before each show to get to be in proximity of discomfort, because I knew it was going to be an uncomfortable thing while I was performing, the fear of going up again. So I think at each point in your career, as your body changes, as your relationship to success or failure changes, as your relationship to different parts, sometimes you will have so much interest in crushing one part because it's so near and dear to you that it will become overwhelming. And to know your body and to be able to self-evaluate in real time is an incredibly useful tool. And for me, I think that's come about through the practice of mindfulness. And so when you say you have received me as calm in a certain position or situation, that's likely because I've over-prepared, got into that particular moment, taken a breath to realize where I am. Like right now, I'm sitting in a chair talking to you all, and then allowed my preparation to exercise itself. That is something that you can use to sustain whether or not There are times, there are times when you're performing, when you know that you just hit that scene out of the park, that there wasn't a better iteration of it that you could have done. That thrill will take you out of the moment in the same way that panic does. And you will fuck up the next 4 scenes because you're so proud of yourself. But if you have the capacity in real time to take a breath and then understand that your body is experiencing pride that is not the character's, but it's your own, and you can dispense with it in the service of the story, it's the same thing that you can do with panic. You can realize the panic is not the character's panic, it's your own panic. And you can, in the service of the story, table it for a moment and go back to the work that you had done and revisit the panic maybe afterwards on your way home. So those are some of the tools that I try to employ successfully and unsuccessfully throughout my career. But I promise you, it is not going to go away. So learn to interact with it in a way that doesn't make it an obstacle.
That's so helpful. I actually feel relief just having that information. Also, Terry advocates for a lot of the tools you just said. I'm like, that's what he's always talking about. Yeah. I just wanted to say that the character of Ashitaka and the story of Princess Mononoke means so much to me. It's moved me since an early age, and it became part of who I am. Thank you for playing that role with such humanity. And I think we need more stories like that, as you mentioned.
I couldn't agree more. And I highly encourage you to watch the Japanese version of it, because I don't speak Japanese, but when I was asked to do it, I saw the cut. That performance is fucking rad. It is so coming from the depths of that actor's soul that all I was trying to do was approximate some portion of what he did. It is really, it
really came from the depths of your soul too, I can say. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tarek. Justin?
Right. Yes. Hadley Durkee has a great question.
Hi.
Hi. It's so nice to meet you. My name is Hadley. I'm
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. My question is, how do you awaken and nurture your inner child?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Why do you want to know?
I want to know because I think oftentimes I don't let my inner child fully come out to play. I get nervous about doing that. So I admire your work so much. So I wanted to see how you do that.
Well, in graduate school, we had several formidable teachers. Jim Calder was one of them. He's a movement teacher. Paul Walker is another. And our first year, they insisted upon our exploration of our inner clown, our original playfulness, the notion that we are only in an enterprise of playfulness and we can dispense with any sense of ego. So for me, the opportunity to spend a year doing nothing but dispensing with my sense of myself as this cool 20-something actor who was going to try to have sweet hair and awesome abs every time was phenomenal. The crucial component, again, to this is that when you can find your sense of playfulness, it gives you a level of flexibility that works in service of the story. And when the story is rad, that energy goes to you. You're rad. So if your concern is for your own ego, your playfulness is the thing that will allow you through the story to build your ego by being a part of this community. So understanding the relevance of your own creative voice, that both that which you can articulate and that which you can't articulate, which is, I think, what you're talking about with inner child, is the notion that I'm game for anything will pay off, because there is only one Hadley. There is only you. You're the only person who's ever had the Hadley experience. And the singularity of that voice is imperative for any good director or writer to exploit in the interest of telling a story. So if your reason for protecting that is your concern for ego, I can promise you your ego will rise as you allow that playfulness out. It might take some time. You might stumble a little bit. You might, it's one of the reasons why acting students love to get naked. They're doing their best to dispense with all of this like ego. So they just want to bare themselves and say, I promise I'm not hiding anymore. Like this is, I really am out there. But I think the notion of an inner child and an inner child spills things. An inner child lies. An inner child tries to get away with shit. An inner child aspires to something that they'll never be. There are all these things that come to my mind when you say that are brilliant for creative artists. And if you ignore that in the service of trying to protect a sense of self, it's understandable because we all get incredibly insecure in this. So don't feel as though that that's something unusual. We are in protect mode most of the time, but I do think it gives you the best opportunity to allow people to use what is uniquely you in the service of a story, which will bring that kind of singular energy and focus to you that you might be trying to protect against. So I would say, I don't know what sort of tools you use, Terry, in your work to try to unlock that singular kind of creativity.
LSD.
LSD is a perfect one.
Yeah.
Do it in moderation, like all things in moderation. But the notion of really letting, even if it's a theoretical trip, go the way that it wants to go, because that's the way your body's telling it should go. That's the way your emotional life is telling you. That's the way your intellectual life is telling you it should go. Finding a way to use your own intuition and not curate it is so great, because you will find directors who will help you curate it. I can promise you that there'll be no shortage of that. So
that was a joke, by the way. I just want to make sure in case any law enforcement people or parents or.
Oh yeah, this is being recorded, right?
Yeah. That was a joke. I think improvisation trains that. I mean, obviously staying playful is everything. And as you were speaking, because this really is time for students' questions, but I was there like, I was thinking about Ian McKellen, who you worked with, and I was like, I can't think of a more playful older person than Ian McKellen.
Yeah, no question.
And how he's managed to keep that wonder. I think that's part of it, is like being a virgin, and I think watching children is helpful, although they think you're creepy now if you hang out around, you used to be able to go to the playground and you weren't a creep, but if you can't have a kid, like just study people. But just improvisation, this idea that we never know where the moment's going, which is kind of a lot of what our training is about. We do a lot of improvisation, so you don't come in and play a scene even though you have text.
Right.
Trust the text is going to be the text, and then you really work in the moment off your partner, which means that lines can come out sometimes very differently than you might imagine.
Absolutely.
And that to me is all about inner child,
Well, and when you speak about improvisation, it occurs to me that you likely doing it in a class setting. So you've got your peers in there, right? And what's better than when an improvisation goes perfectly? I mean, everybody's cheering. You came up with the perfect line at the perfect moment. However, when you have expectations for yourself in improvisation, I suspect you're missing the point of improvisation, which is to be present in the moment, to allow some sort of singular Hadley to come out in that moment, whatever way, whether it lands with a thud, whether people are disoriented or disinterested, is absolutely irrelevant. You cannot make the result, the aim of an improvisation. You have to, I mean, self-evaluation, I'm hoping, is a part of your process, and you have to understand the ways in which you're getting, you have to notice the ways in which you're getting in your own way to allowing that, as you described, inner child to come out, and be able to dispense with them gently, say, I don't need that. I don't need that. You don't have to be harsh or dictatorial about all the things you want to protect, because it's understandable. But if you can gently dispense with them in those moments, so whatever part of you is able to come out in that is not result oriented, you will be working towards curating that that voice that will be, again, intrinsically you, and will be so necessary, I think, in the formation of a career.
That's great. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. That was so inspiring.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Good. Justin, maybe one more?
Yes, yes. Let's see who's next. You're speaking the clown language here. I told Hadley just
There
come
you
down
are.
Yeah,
clown class.
yeah.
That's it, man.
See.
Because obviously, Justin, people aren't taking clown class so that they can join the circus, but rather to free them up to do all kinds of work, right?
Clown work is essential to me. I'm sorry to interrupt, Justin, but it is essential. And for no shortage of reasons. But again, to dispense with ego, this is a crucial thing in trying to be available in any given moment and make it appear as though, well, and also to give room to that voice, that
Absolutely. It was so great you said the thing about Hadley's own Hadley voice. The thing I say all the time is that actors love to tell themselves there were 10 other people in the audition room exactly like me. And I try to reframe and say, actually, that's not true. If you cultivate the unique you know,
precisely.
awesome. If I could sneak in a quick question of my own,
Yeah.
just because it's related. I've worked a lot with the 52nd Street Project, and I know you have too. And for people who don't know, this is an organization in Hell's Kitchen, been there for over 30 years, I believe. And children 10 years old are writing their own plays, and actors like Billy and Edie Falco are acting the kids' plays. And so just to what we just spoke about children, could you say what you value about your experiences with them, whether it's service to a community or it's accessing your inner child? Or
Man, Justin, I don't care about the charity or the kids, whatever. I go there for the frickin' parts.
Yeah.
I have had the best parts in my life.
Yeah.
There. I mean, listen, I saw Robert Sean Leonard do it 25 years ago or 30 years ago, and I said, I need to be a part of this. And so I've been a part of it ever since. And I love the organization, what it offers, again, by way of what I've said many times about being a part of your community. That was the entire impulse of this, is that there was this community, this engine of Broadway that employed so many people, but was apart from the community around it in Hell's Kitchen. And so this man tried to find a way to integrate the two with this after-school program of teaching playwriting to 9, 10, 11-year-olds, and then having professionals come in, directors and actors to perform them. This is precisely what we're talking about. You cannot have an ego in that environment. In fact, the initial phase of each of those is that you have an interview with the child where they ask you a series of questions that they've written. It usually involves video games or sports. And then at the end of that, they go off and they write a play. And after that interview, I've been cast as a nerd probably 5 or 6 times. So you can't hold on to some sort of ego part about yourself when you know a child is. You have to dive into those parts with everything that you have. And there is a total thrill and liberation. So I would say that is actually an exercise that I have employed, both to be a part of the community, boring, but as an actor to continue to allow this uninhibited creative voice I got to play this British travel agent who was a possum, was under the false impression that the hood was a destination. And so he was going to the hood, as it was called in the play, to kind of find out what the best activities were. And he gets jumped. This is a kid writing this about New York City. And the level of ingenuity that we had to employ was substantial. And it was thrilling to try to bring his idea to life. And of course, they don't edit these kids. They allow their spirit or their voice, their grammar, whatever it is, to come through, so that they can understand what it's like to have some sort of creative voice in a public space. That's the idea of it. So it's true. That has been one of my cheats through the years to hold on to my playfulness and inner child, is using the 52nd Street project to my own acting devices.
Yeah. That's great. Can we do one more, Billy?
Sure.
Okay, Justin, because I know there are probably some people who put questions in and they'll be frustrated they didn't get asked.
Yes. Matt Dry, are you still here? Oh, maybe not.
I'm here.
Matt hates children.
Matt Dry is in the participant.
Oh yeah, he answered my question before. Tarek had a similar question if you read them both. Thank you though. Thank you for the time.
Of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see who's next. Nayeli Ignacio, are you still here? Nayeli's in Kendrick Summer Meisner Intensive.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm a big fan, so it's also very nerve-wracking to talk to you too, but I will definitely.
Good, I'm glad. I hope I'm intimidating.
Nayeli, you have a bear in your screen. What is that?
That's the background that I chose. It's one of the painting samples. Yeah.
So you're not
I'm not referencing.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So I also am currently an undergrad in business because of the same reasons as you. So I really enjoyed hearing your background, and I've been thinking about going to grad school for acting, and I haven't really grown my network much, and I was wondering if you had any advice on the application process for grad school, and if you would go through the same route, because I know we talked about the economics of it. So if you would go through the same route, or if you would take a different one. Thank you.
Well, it's a great question. And one of the challenges to any acting school, to any school, is faculty changes, and the school is only as good as its faculty. You can have a central theme, obviously, but if you don't have the agents of addressing that central theme, then you're not going to be growing the kinds of performers that I think that you hope to. So I'm not sure really what the lay of the land is right now. So unfortunately, I can't give you helpful advice about what schools are producing working actors, what schools are producing ingenious actors. To your point of networking, I would say get involved in whatever way you can in the school that you are right now with other performers, and begin to ask questions of them and the teachers. Be curious, be ambitious about your creative ambitions. Really apply some effort to bringing people together who will be able to speak to you about their own experiences, their own enterprise, what they think is. I only applied to NYU, Chapel Hill, I think ACT, because at the time, those were the schools that my teachers valued. It wasn't as though I visited those schools and I were like, yes, Ron Van Loo is teaching this, I will pursue that. It was really a question of, who do you all think are producing the kind of actors right now that I've described I want to be, which is a working actor with a versatile career over a long period of time. And that's when they were able to say, we think these places right now are would provide that kind of opportunity for you. So get involved in whatever way that you can with the community that you're in order to your question of building a network. And that can really be anything. I was on a student soap opera when I was in college, and made some lifelong friends and fellow actors and creative people that allowed me to network and to ask questions and to feed ideas off them. But you can't do that from afar. It has to be in close proximity because you have to begin to build those collaborative skills.
Great. Wonderful
Thank you so
question.
much.
Yeah. And there are many roads to the mountain.
No question about it.
Many roads. Well, we went over time a little bit, and that is in part because of your generosity. And I have such a warm feeling towards you right now, Billy. And
thanks, Terry. Likewise.
we speak the same language, really. And it's an honor and a privilege to me. And selfishly, I hope we can work together sometime on something because
I would love it.
It would be a blast. I hope you and Sam can be in something together because that would be a super blast.
Us too.
Yeah. And I want to invite all our people who are watching to maybe turn on their cameras and thank you in person right now because it's been very, very special. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh, killer.
Look at these actors, right?
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. These are actors. So thank you so much, everybody. Yeah.
Guys, this is really inspiring to see.
Thanks, Billy.
My good fortune to be able to speak to you guys. Thank you.
And with the internet, this guy Nipun, he's in New Delhi, and we got people in Canada, and it's like this is kind of amazing. And Atlanta and Texas and California. So this is so lovely because normally we do these things in person in Brooklyn, and this really makes it well, it spreads the love. So thanks very much, Billy.
That's incredible. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be here.
All right. All the best.
All right. Take
Thanks,
care.
Billy.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you,
wonderful.
Billy. Thank you. Thank you. Gary.
So much.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Dustin.
Thanks, Terry.
Dustin.
Thanks, sir.